good evening, morning, afternoon, night, whenever you find it to once again join us at the Quick Fire. I, as always, am Alan, the pole with the gold, joined by my lovely jubbly DJ and Tim as co-hosts. Let's just get right into it. We have a bunch of stuff that's just happening right after another, it seems. First and foremost, former Fire head coach Ezra Hendrickson has accepted a position as head coach of the Saint Vincent and the Grenadines national team. Ezra has earned 36 caps for the Vincy Heat as a player and served as an assistant coach for the team while also working as an assistant in MLS at the same time. The team kicks off their 24-25 CONCACAF Nations League B campaign in September. So good luck to Ezra.
Good for him.
Yeah, I'm glad that he's got another job. Good for him. It took a little bit of time, but I'm glad that he also got some time to like take stock and stuff like that. And best of luck to him and the Vincy Heat in Nations League B.
Yep, all the glory to him. And I do wish his time at the Fire was a bit better, but still, you got to start somewhere when it comes to your, I guess, head coaching career. So, when it comes to, I guess, the biggest news of the week, Shaqiri and the Fire have mutually terminated their contracts. So it was reported for us on, the 14th. So you guys are hearing this a few days later.
Wednesday, deadline day.
Wednesday, deadline day. Yesterday was deadline day. So,
dude, time is such a flat circle for you right now because of how tired you are. I feel for you, man.
So tired. So, yeah, yesterday was deadline day for us. And the Fire announced that the club and Chicago and Shaqiri have agreed to terminate the midfielder's contract. And they said, after discussions with Sheridan, we have mutually agreed that parting ways is best in all parties. That's what Georg Heid said. We thank him for his contributions to the club and wish him success in the next chapter of his career. Okay, I guess, that's one way of him leaving, I guess, because for the longest time we were saying, especially after he left for the Euros, he's probably not going to wear a Fire jersey again. And then he technically comes back right before Leagues Cup, but he doesn't do anything for Leagues Cup. And, they can't really do anything in terms of transferring. So they just were like, okay, bye-bye. It just ends several months of speculation on whether he'd see out his contract, whether he would pull a Jairo Torres and just ride it out for a bit longer, just being on the bench or just not even at all. But we'll see what his future entails, whether it's in Turkey, whether it's in Switzerland, somewhere else. He has 14 goals, 18 assists in 69 appearances in MLS, 76 in all competitions. And a lot of media outlets, including our friend Eli Lassiter, have been saying he's been the worst DP signing in MLS history. That's a bit much.
He's not even the worst DP in Fire history. To put it in perspective, he's definitely top 10 best DPs in Fire history.
He's not even the worst DP that the Fire had in training camp at the beginning of this season.
Yeah. Like, to put this in perspective, the Fire have had some really bad DPs.
Yeah. You'd have to go back a bit with this one. And Shaq definitely was, for the money and the contract and everything, probably wasn't worth what we were expecting. Essentially, I was a bit starstruck, being like, wow, someone like Xherdan Shaqiri. But then, I think a lot of other people realized that, like, he's probably not going to do too much. And I guess they were right.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at how he did in his years with the Fire, his third best season ever in terms of just like sheer point production, and third best in terms of like actual goals, although some of them were penalties, were both with the Fire in 2022. And he had a middling season with the Fire like in 2023 and kind of a bad start to 2024. But if I were to mix up his seasons, the number of minutes, the number of goals and assists that he had, and just give them to somebody randomly, I don't think you'd be able to pick out the ones that he was with the Fire, because they just are very similar to all the other ones that we've seen throughout his professional career. And so I think the mistake was fundamentally looking at the highlight reel, because like it is like, I mean, we all know like the highlight reel Shaq moments. That's what we were all excited about. And I think a lot of people expected that was like the tip of the iceberg, when in reality, like we saw all of those highlight reel goals because they happened in those big moments. And he had those big moments in big games, which is important, but he didn't have 10, 20, 30 more of those moments in the smaller games behind that.
Yeah, you mentioned the big games, and immediately the first thought that comes to mind is the Messiless Miami game at home last season, where he scored 2 goals and definitely showed up for that game. Like you mentioned, he needs to show up for more than that. And he just,
and like that back and forth game against Montreal last season too, where he showed up, like the assist that he had against Montreal this year, the like PK mind battle he had with Dane St. Clair in the League's Cup last year.
That was awesome.
That is probably, that's probably the moment a lot of people, MLS sickos are going to remember the most when it comes to Shaqiri, that little moment.
Yeah, and those are all good moments. And like, the man scored a hat trick in a World Cup before, right? Like, but he scored a hat trick, but it's not like he also scored like 6 other goals and 7 assists in that campaign, right? Like he scored the hat trick, and like that was basically his World Cup, which is incredible in a way. Like, how many people have scored a hat trick in a World Cup, but also to expect him to be a difference maker the way that like Lionel Messi has been throughout his career, I think was just a fundamental mistake. I don't think we should ever blame a player for what they get paid, because they should take literally every dollar that their agent should get for them, because you don't know how long your career is going to be. Like, and it ultimately, sure, it's millionaires, but they're taking money from billionaires. So I don't know. My sympathy is limited for the money, but you can blame the people giving them the contract. We talked about that last week. So, but either way, it's not surprising to see him go. I was a little surprised when it happened. I don't know about you guys. Like, I wasn't expecting this to actually happen, because it required Shaqiri to basically say no to a couple $1 million for basically doing nothing at that point, right? Like he just had to show up and he would have made that money.
Yeah, no, I genuinely thought he was going to just pull a Jairo Torres, because after the League's Cup, we had this discussion of what's going to happen. Is he going to just pull a Jairo Torres and just stay out the rest of the contract, or like just not play?
So Jairo is also terminated.
Well, yeah, but in the sense that he still rides out the rest of the season. Like that he doesn't play, but he is still technically here essentially, or that he makes like minimum or barely any appearances essentially. That was like one of the questions that we had. Like it just definitely is a bit of a surprise that Shaq was like, if I'm not going to be playing, I guess that's kind of what decision was. Like, if I'm not going to be playing, then okay, I'll go somewhere else,
Yeah, when the second buyout didn't end up happening, that was the only leverage the Fire had, is to say like, look, you can stay. We promised you this money, but we will not give you appearances or whatever, which is, it gives you, that's the only stick the Fire had. And I didn't think that stick was going to work just because of how much money we were talking about. So kind of surprised it did. But hey, either way, it means the Fire are out the most expensive player in team history in terms of like total spend. And in terms of salary, not in terms of like acquisition costs. And I honestly don't think that it's odd though, because Alan, I know you were also at the meet and greet with Fire players that happened, after they were eliminated from the League's Cup, and Shaqiri was very popular there with a lot of people, like not just for getting autographs, but
he and Brian had the longest lines.
And not just the longest lines, but like when people were talking to him, like they seemed genuinely glad to be saying hi to him and to get selfies with him and stuff like that. Like it wasn't just like, you're a big name, I need you to sign this thing of mine kind of thing. It seemed like there was actual enthusiasm for people, getting to meet and shake hands with the guy.
Yeah. So, I mean, still, he is a name. But literally today on Twitter, I saw a post that was like, "Who is like an absolute lion for country, but like a kitten for club?" And him and Memo Ochoa were the two that just kept showing up in terms of, well, I guess, that category. All right. All that's really left to say is good luck, Shaq. Your time here was all right. Maybe a bit less, but you know,
It was a
time to
time.
move on. There was a time. So, last bit of news, because this pretty much happened almost immediately. Maybe not almost immediately, but like a few hours afterwards. The Fire replace hit. Well, they one player out, another player in, as the Fire acquire winger Ariel Lassiter from Montreal for 75,000 GAM funny money, with a potential of 75,000 more funny money being going Montreal's way, depending on certain performance conditions being met. He is on contract with the Fire for the remainder of the 24 season, and this could be, barring something major happen, the 52nd and final signing of the Georg Heights era in Chicago.
Ariel Lassiter is also the son of MLS legend Roy Lassiter, which is something that Tim actually just told us before the podcast, and I did not know.
Yeah, no, learned something new.
Yeah, born in Costa Rica and came over with his father when he was playing, I think initially for the Tampa Bay Mutiny. He also spent some time with DC United back when like that was a very impressive thing for an MLS player to be doing. I think he also hit up the Miami Fusion and KC Wizards. So like the guy just made it around the OG MLS clubs, just never made it to the Fire.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, the Fire technically aren't an OG club. To be fair,
no, but I mean like the like initial like MLS like 1.0 era clubs that were, I think like DC United were like the big club other than the Fire that I think most teams would like circle that on their calendars in like the late 90s and early 2000s and be like, this is going to be a game we got to get up for. Yeah. So he played with that DC United team. I mean, and you know, obviously
to Italy.
Interesting.
Like Girona brought him in on loan. I just realized that. What the heck was Roy Lassiter?
Yeah, I mean, he made a couple of appearances there. It really wasn't uncommon in that era for MLSers to get, although I'm pretty sure he was in Serie B or Genoa was in Serie B at that point in time. So, you know, second, still, I mean, but it, you know, kind of cool fact about him. But we're talking about the son.
Yes, who is primarily a left-footed left winger, or as well left wingback. He has 3 goals and 7 assists in 20 games for Montreal this season. Likely brought on to be depth behind Gutman while Gasper is still dealing with injury. It probably means Dean will be Aragoni's backup, which is, you know, still a boost in some way.
It's what I think is what we thought. Like, it is good of Dean to be able to play on both sides of that pitch. I don't think he was ever that convincing on the left. I think Aragoni was more convincing on the left, but right is his natural spot.
It is also the Fire have very clear. One thing I've been thinking for a while: the Fire have very clearly been missing a left-footed player. Like, you have Jimenez, but Jimenez isn't really. He's not going to do what Gutman does.
Yeah, so it should be a good acquisition. I mean, he's been a regular contributor in Montreal. He, I think, spent time with the Dynamo and Inter Miami prior to that. I think LA Galaxy initially, and may have been in their academy for a while. I should have looked this up beforehand.
That's all right.
But like very much like a sort of like tried and true MLSer at this point in his career. Still kind of in his prime, so he's not on the wrong side of 30 yet. And his contract expires this year. Obviously, there's a chance the Fire could always resign him, but like I think this is a move for getting a guy this year that makes a difference, that fits in under the cap now that the Fire have some cap money to spend and a roster space, which they did not until Shaqiri vacated it.
This is
So
also
it's kind of
been
funny. Go ahead. Sorry.
This is something that Fire have been doing for a few years now of just end of year, grab one guy, fin the roster, and that's it. Memories of Sana Niasi from 2014?
The funny thing is, for the rest of his life, Ariel Lassiter will say that he, like Shaq, had to make way on an MLS roster so that he could fit in.
That's a flex, I guess. Speaking of MLS roster building, we mentioned previously when MLS mentioned the new roster rules that they were doing this new thing where teams could either choose between 3 DPs and 3 under 22 initiative slots, or 2 DPs and 4 under 2 initiative slots with an additional amount of GAM funny money. The Fire are going with the latter, 2 DPs, 4 under 22 slots, as well as 1 million in GAM funny money.
Yeah, and that would be 2 million starting next year because of they only made it 1 million because it's like half a season. The Fire are only committed to this model through the end of the year. They can switch to the 3 DP and 3 U22 model, which is what I would expect them to do. I don't think that they're intentionally going to have just 2 DPs and go the 4 U22 route. Basically, if you can't find a third DP you're going to sign, which, considering that Shaqiri's contract was terminated on a Wednesday, which is when the deadline for signing players was that weren't free agents, like it wasn't going to happen. There's cap advantages to getting that GAM. It expires at in that season, but it still gives you cap flexibility for future years. So it gave the Fire the ability to have GAM to use Lassiter that was expiring, use it or lose it. So it's kind of like might as well. And at the same time, doesn't really it preserves the roster flexibility going forward and actually gives the team some more flexibility with allocation money that doesn't expire. The Fire aren't the only team that basically were not able to sign a third DP this window, and therefore are going like the 2 DP 4 U22 and GAM route. Like Atlanta's doing the same thing. So is LAFC. So is Inter Miami, believe it or not. But that's because they can get DP level players to sign TAM level contracts,
which is crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. And LAFC, same thing. By the way, like Gareth Bale on a TAM deal for half a season. But it's not uncommon. It's just I don't think that MLS had really thought this through. That like basically, if you are trying to sign a DP, you can't. You go this 2 and 4 route and basically leave one of the U22 slots open because it just saves you allocation money for your future and helps you the next season. And a lot of MLS teams, including the Fire, could not find like a third DP within the time that they had in the window.
MLS roster rules are so much fun, right, Tim?
Yes and no. I love them.
They make my autism tingle.
Yeah, they're like fun in a very nerdy autistic, like leaning kind of way. And at the same time, they still make you want to put your head through a wall.
I'm more of the latter, I guess. Well, maybe not like automatically like put head through wall, quote unquote, but like just lightly tap.
At least a marshmallow wall.
Yeah.
One fun fact before just going back to Lassiter for a second, we didn't mention this. We should have. He is teammates with Francisco Calvo on the Costa Rican national team.
Wow. Another Fire connection.
I purposely try and not remember much about Francisco Calvo, to be fair.
I mean, Francisco Calvo on Costa Rica is a different guy than Francisco Calvo.
I still remember that one time with Costa Rica where he scored like an amazing goal and turns around and got sent off.
That sounds like Francisco Calvo.
The Gordie Howe hat trick of soccer.
All right. So next week, unless something again happens, though I don't think there's really much chance of something really big happening. Do you think something big's going to happen again?
I don't know. Georg Heitz could announce that he's coming back.
Georg Heitz is announcing his world tour. So yeah, next week we will preview the team's match against NYC FC on Saturday, August 24th. We'll also go over the rest of the Fire season, sort of what must be done scenarios, since we'll see what happens. Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that is all to be discussed for today in Fireland.
Yep. So we'll see you next week, and then I think we'll get back into a regular groove. Keep on doing these if major news happens. I mean, the Fire are having a global search for a sporting director, so that may shake out at some point in the fall.
True. All right.
Alan, have you gotten the contact about getting the job, by the way? Have you responded to them yet?
No, I haven't gotten anything about being the next GM.
Unfortunate.
Yeah. I guess they're not looking for a guy who teaches middle school general music. All right. Ladies and germs, I, as always, have been Alan the Pole with Gold, joined by my lovely jubbly co-hosts, DJ and Tim. Come on, you men in red.